Hello once again, it's Mart with another Max Q restoration update on the J-3 Cub. And you've seen these wings before, so we're going to move on to the fuselage here real quick. But first I wanted to show this video. I posted this on YouTube a couple days ago, but it hasn't had a lot of exposure, so I thought I'd show it here as part of this video. This was on the 4th of July in my Baby Ace, which is painted like a Cub, but of course it's a single seat open cockpit with a fairly small wing compared to what a Cub would have. So, but it's a ton of fun, and I used to live on this little airport here in Indiana. It's about 20 miles from where I live, and so I bopped over there on the 4th and made a landing in the grass. And my dad taught me when I was young to be real smooth with airplanes, and I've always kind of latched on to that. So I'm always trying to get perfect landings, and of course you can't ever actually have a perfect landing, but you can come pretty close sometimes, and this is a pretty good example of that. So anyway, and I love this view looking from the tail wheel. I actually had the Insta 360 camera on the wing, but I'm having some issues, a little bit of a learning curve with that camera, so I don't have any video from that flight, but at least I got the tail wheel view, which I really like. So anyway, I just thought that'd be kind of cool to see. I really like that Baby Ace, and I had planned, actually, here it is from 2022 up at Oshkosh, and I was gonna fly it up again this year. I haven't had it up since 22, and but it's just between the money, the time off and such, it's going to be a little bit hard to make it all work out. I am going to be at Oshkosh all week, but I'm going to drive. That'll be cheaper, and then I've got a bunch of airplane parts that I want to try to sell at the Aero Mart up there to offset being off of work all week. So I don't think I'll be flying the Baby Ace up there, but at least I've got it flying again here this summer, and I'm having fun with it. So thanks for letting me put that in there. So now we're heading into the spray booth, which of course is not actually doing any spraying just yet, but it is where I'm working on the fuselage, and I got a bunch of the welding done today. So the first part that I started on was, and I actually built this panel back at the start of the project because I knew that I'd really wanted to put an access panel here in the aft lower fuselage. So again, the fuselage is upside down here in the rotisserie. So this is back at the tail wheel mounts here. So I have a plan here for this access panel that will allow good access to down there, which is really up there when the airplane's right side up, to the jack screw for the stabilizer trim. And then also for the tail wheel bolt, you can get to the head of it through here as well. So this fairly large opening, even though it's really not huge, will allow really nice access for maintenance because typically there's maybe just one inspection ring here, and it's hard, especially if you have a big hand, to get it through to try to do anything. And then there may be an inspection ring on the side, but usually the access to the jack screw is really difficult. But with this, it would be fantastic. So I made a variety of tabs here that are going to get, this one actually has the nut plate in it, these don't yet, but those will get nut plates, and then this will be able to be easily mounted and removed, and that'll make great maintenance access. So that was the first part of today, and then I went ahead and got more of the welding for the repair that needed to be done. So this diagonal here that has a couple of fair lead mounts, I decided that rather than trying to replace that tube, I would just do a split sleeve, and that's what it's got on it. And again, all of the damage is not really damage. It's corrosion, it's some heavy pitting. Most likely this fuselage at some point sat with some moisture in the lower fuselage area when the fabric was on, and retained that moisture for a long time. And there were some repairs that have been done in the past. So these tubes have been patched, but it looked like they either didn't go far enough, or maybe more corrosion has happened. You know, I don't know when this took place. So anyway, I got the split sleeve in place here, and then I replaced a section of the lower longeron here with the angle cuts and the inner sleeves mounted in, and rosette welds here. So that all went really well. And in addition to that, well, when I went to do this, I had to cut the this cross tube and this diagonal down here. I had to cut those welds and to free up the longeron. And so I used a angle grinder with a circular abrasive wheel on it, basically a diamond edged wheel. I used to use that in tile work all the time, and it'll cut through the metal fairly well, but you have to be really careful, obviously, because you don't want to damage any of the tubing that you're going to keep. So I had a lot of experience running that with tile very precisely. So as it turned out, I had no trouble getting those things out, cut the handle off here as well, and then got these things welded back in today. So the remaining part is this diagonal here still needs its sleeve and to come back up here, and then the matching diagonal on the other side, which has some pretty heavy pitting, which I don't know if you can see it, but it still needs cut out. So those two diagonals are what remain yet to accomplish, but otherwise the majority of what was intended for this repair has now been done. So that's encouraging. And then here, if we rotate the fuselage back around, we can look inside the cockpit, and I'm hoping here before too long, well, first I'd have to get well, I wouldn't have to, but I would get the stringers on. The one center stringer is just sort of temporarily in place. All the stringers have been made. They just need a little bit of adjustment and mounted. So once the stringers are in place and I prime and paint the areas back there in the back that have been repaired, then we can consider this fuselage ready for fabric. So the first thing that'll happen there is this is the baggage, the soft baggage compartment that goes in a Cub. This one came from Univair and actually manufactured by Airtex. And it drops down into this area here, and it actually gets glued in and actually kind of becomes part of the fabric process of the interior, which that's one of the things about a Cub interior. It's actually covered with the aircraft fabric. So for example, down here at the door area, so you'll have a layer of fabric here on the inside, and then of course there'll be the fabric out here on the outside like normal. So most airplanes after this era had an aluminum panel or several panels that would go here on the inside, or maybe also covered with upholstery. But the Cub used the aircraft fabric on the inside. So it's kind of a different, unique method, and it's a little bit challenging because there's a lot of unusual shapes, some tubes in the way, and the pieces go in sort of in multiple pieces, and so it can be a little bit of a challenge. I've never done it. When I did the Super Cub, it had aluminum panels, and I actually put a layer of leather on top of that. But the aluminum panels, I mean, they're very predictable, and it just seems like the fabric is kind of a challenge. But obviously people have been doing this since the 1930s, so it can be done. I'm not too worried about that. And I enjoy research, and I have several friends that have experience with this. So even though it's a little intimidating diving into that aspect of this, I know that I'm going to be able to get through it. So we'll see how that goes here as I get started on the actual fabric work, which will start in this area. So actually, it may start on the wings, but at least when we get to the fuselage, it's going to start in here inside the cockpit. The other thing about that in here, it's kind of surprising or interesting that for as simple as a Cub is, the cockpit area and the interior is kind of complex. There's a lot of pieces that are associated with the rudder pedals and the brake assemblies. Of course, the torque tube's pretty much like you'd have with any other airplane, but the floorboards, the interior fabric, all of it kind of works together to create a little bit of a challenge, and there's kind of an order to things. But I don't expect any problems. And in fact, the Super Cub was very similar, just not having the fabric on the inside. It had those panels instead. So, but with those floorboards, I still have to cut those out. And in fact, we can go back out and we can take a look at the blank wood material that I have for the floorboards. Usually you use a 5-ply birch plywood, and that's what I've got here. This is just like we would normally use, except that this also has a thin layer of ash plywood bonded on top of that. And the ash has an absolutely beautiful grain. And it's an open grain, which allows you to do some unique treatments to it to enhance that grain a little bit more. So I have some ideas. It'll be fun to try, see how it goes. I'm sure it'll be very nice, and it might even be fantastic the way it turns out. But most important, this is a very strong 5-ply birch, so it's going to work great for the floorboards. So then over here on the wings, I did have something else I wanted to show that I forgot to mention in the previous video, and that was that I had gone ahead and made finally the aileron cables that I had been needing to do. When you make these, you actually have to put the ends on when you swage the cable together. Otherwise you can't get the eye end on there that goes into the turnbuckle. So a few things that you got to kind of watch there. And then these cables here that are already in the wing are the balance cables that go through the cockpit over the head of the person in the front seat. And I didn't put the ends on this end because several of the cables were not the length that you would expect them to be with this particular airplane. I mean, not by a huge amount, but they were off a little bit, and that sort of had me confused as to what's going on. And, you know, it could be, well, one was made long, so the other one was made short, but it's a little hard to know for certain. So what I did was I went ahead and made the other aileron cables. So these are the cables that wind up going down the wing strut and into the cockpit and attaching to the stick. You can see this little fair lead that I made on the lathe that attaches on the wing strut, and so these cables go from the aileron down to the stick. And on this end I've got this attaches to the and I just have a temporary bolt in there so that the shackle won't fall off, but these attach to the torque tube, and then the other end here attaches to the aileron itself, and of course there's both cables here. So the idea is these cables are made the length that they should be, and so we'll do these cable ends once the wings are put on and the final assembly is taking place, and the access in the cockpit is quite good for being able to put the ends on these and swage them and such. So, and the primary idea here is that with these ends going into the turnbuckle, obviously you don't want them turned out too much. You want a proper amount of threads engaged into the barrel. And so rather than going ahead and making those cables and then finding out that we have to adjust more than you'd want to, if we hold off on making the cables, we set everything else right where we want it, and then we know exactly how long we want those cables to be where they come together there in the fuselage. So I think that will be the best idea for that, and it won't cause a lot of problems as far as the final assembly goes. So all things considered, I think we are getting really close to the point here that we're going to be able to turn the corner and start throwing some Dacron all around here in the shop, which, by the way, right there it is, the big roll of fabric for the airplane. And so that's pretty encouraging. It's nice to have the fuselage almost ready, and the tail surfaces and the ailerons, they're ready. Other than the rudder, you know, has the AD that affects many Piper airplanes, and so the rudder is probably going to get a new main tube put in its place, welded in place, and so we'll see what the plan is for sure on that. But otherwise, all the other components very soon here are going to be ready for fabric, and we can get on to that process. So otherwise, thanks for watching, and hey, we'll hopefully see you up at Oshkosh.